Oh, yeah. Fly, little Saturn rocket. Fly. We have a moon landing hoax to effect. Oh, yeah. Yeah. This stream is not a hoax. This stream is not faked. It's not filmed by Stanley Kubrick. And it's not part of revealing a global pedo ring. None of those things. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Uh, all that shit is that away on the internet. You can find it. Let me know, how it goes. Also, let me know if the voice is low. The voice is always low. Let me lower the seat. All right. Am I still in frame? The voice is almost always low. I like this little mic, but I don't think it's that good. It's probably not that good. It's a Rode, a Rude. Uh, Rode makes good mics for this, but not very good. Jim Bowden, hello, good to see you. Phil the Killa Phila, Art Bell may or may not be there. Kyle C. Jim Bowden says, Nick is a very articulate young man. APEC, I think that's APAC. Get it right, dude. Is gradually losing. Come on, Jim. Pull it together, man. Its space with the young and the chosen ones are afraid that U.S. is accepting MAGA equals make anti-Semitism great again. That would be MASGA. Just saying. Yeah, I don't know. We'll talk a little bit about that. I I was going to call this. I was going to make this all about stochastic terrorism because I'm working up another fine essay on the subject of so-called stochastic terrorism. Which, correct me if I'm wrong, this, as I note in my piece here, this 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 sort of became fashionable. This idea of stochastic terrorism, of course, and it was just uh, it's kind of took off on the left. Never really got. It never really got its wings going. What's the expression? It's failing me. Never really gained traction. Um, but it was sort of all the rage on the left for a while around right after January 6th, when, the whole idea was to, people forget to where we're supposed to be now. If that at all, that whole, speaking of hoaxes, the whole hoax of presenting January 6th as more than just some dumbass riot, but an outright insurrection directed by Trump and genuinely threatening our democracy, like, oh, these guys, right? These doofuses. I mean, I call them doofuses because they are, but I mean, they're not. They're just crazies, right? All these guys. Nick Fuentes was there. The one reason why I don't think Nick is fed, but the only thing I see that really points to, makes suspicious about Nick is that supposedly he made these really inflammatory comments on January 6th and just apparently didn't get any, uh, didn't get arrested, didn't, nothing's apparently happened to him for outright calling for storming the gates of the Capitol. Of course, in a normal world, even his fiery rhetoric would not be cause for arresting anybody. But anyway, stochastic terrorism as a concept, as a sort of rhetorical bludgeon, was picked up enthusiastically by the left. And again, right now, these years, how 5 years ago, right? Uh, they're supposed to have Trump maybe in jail. All those guys who they put in jail at first are supposed to still be in there. The whole thing was supposed to be broadened, right? More people would be in jail. More of us would be either in jail or perhaps on some sort of probation because they came and forced us into pleading out of you know jail time or there was supposed that whole thing was supposed to get really big, and it was quite a large hoax when they put how many did they put in jail? Maybe hundreds of people were put in jail, some who didn't even go inside the building, right, at the Capitol that day. And they certainly thought they were going to end Trump. And really, it was all about ending the movement. And presumably, there was supposed to be, just a whole sort of new, era of a new leaden age for them of social censorship, of social media censorship, and everything else. And ironically enough, here we are. Trump made it through. He even made it back to the presidency, and he's instituting the censorship on behalf of his Zionist masters. But that's a whole other story. But anyway, stochastic terrorism was, going to be a big part of that. Um, Stochastic terrorism is the idea, as I note here, uh, conceptualizing certain speech as terroristic if it holds the potential, deliberate or not. And in the stochastic terror model, you don't have to deliberately be calling. It's not just, shouting fire in a crowded theater or direct incitement to riot. No, it's just if your words have the potential, uh, or even if you accidentally set off some loon out there, you're engaged in stochastic terrorism. And presumably, this was all supposed to develop. Like I said, it didn't really go anywhere because, while these people still kind of control the megaphone and everything else, and you want to get an idea, their control of the megaphone. Check this out. Just Google. Google is totally under control of Zionists now. Because in researching the stochastic terrorist model, I was trying to find Josh Hammer's calls to quote unquote neutralize Tucker Carlson. You cannot find, I guess it turned up in a Daily Mail article, and I thought he had tweeted something. And the Daily Mail article, like lots of their stuff now, is behind a paywall, I guess. Uh, Daily Mail, I don't know if it's still the case, the most read news daily out there. As goofy as the Daily Mail is, the weird combination that goes on with the Daily Mail, where it's kind of like Piers Morgan. Did he run the Mail? Was it the Mail that he ran? I think it was. Because the publication is just Piers Morgan. It's just Piers Morgan is the personification of the Daily Mail in that on one hand it's this very conservative, not almost conservative, not true, genuinely conservative, but conventional, uh, you know, and it exists as a kind of conservative counterpoint often to such as the Guardian. Uh, but at the same time, it just takes with this stupid sort of normie boomer sort of attitude, takes for granted all of the familiar canards and tropes and conventional idiocy of now, like, racism bad and, anti-Semitism and, just everything, it takes anyway, I'm off on a tangent. But it's funny. They somehow are the most read uh, news daily out there, and now they're paywalling everything. Anyway, here's Google, and so calls to violence by Zionists. I Googled in my desperation to find. There's a couple of instances out there. I think somebody uh, fill me in if you can recall it. There's a couple of instances out there, I think, of Shapiro kind of doing the same thing. But Josh Hammer, the Jewish hyper Zionist, so called friend of Charlie Kirk, called for Tucker Carlson to be neutralized like the fox in the henhouse. Um, so anyway, I can't find it. The article's paywalled. I wanted something just to pull up on the screen and show you the quote of him saying it. It doesn't matter. Um, but so in desperation, I type into Google calls to violence by Zionists. And what it pulls up is every Zionist organization talking about the calls to violence of their supposed calls to violence by their enemies, like the American Jewish Committee. What does globalize the Intifada mean? Obviously, Anti-Defamation League is next. Third is Zionist political violence on Wikipedia. So there's that. Then, Jewish Community Relations Guide to Recognizing Problematic Rhetoric. Merkaz USA, more Jewish organizations. Glorifying violence, excusing silence, calls for violence and death against Jews. And it goes on, right? Even when you finally, you get, like 7 or 8 down, right? They're not quoting outright Zionist organizations anymore. They're going to CNN now, and it's another pro-Zionist point of view. But anyway, it's just insane. And you can go, and just go down the hole here. And everything is, almost every single thing. Here you get to about number 12, and there is something critical of settler colonialism. But almost everything is Zionist organizations whinging about the supposed violence they live in abject fear of which they live in abject fear. Is that how you say that? Anyway, so we were where we're supposed to be at here 5 years on from January 6th and the introduction of this, shiny new idea, stochastic terrorism. We were supposed to be at not where we are now. Not that where we are now is all that good, but we're supposed to be under control. I'm not supposed to be here telling you this shit right now. Yeah, this is not supposed to be happening. Maybe it would be happening. I mean, there's 7 of you here, so I get to say what I want because nobody's here to hear it. No freedom of reach, man, which is a really stupid idea. Fucking Elon Musk. Freedom of speech, not freedom of reach. Like, I thought you were smart, dude. Anyway, so I went out and I decided I'm going to write a little something about it because I decided there were a couple of statements too about Nick Fuentes that seemed to be suggesting that he be neutralized. Josh Hammer defended his neutralized language about Tucker Carlson by saying, "Oh, you dummies, everybody knows neutralized just means countered rhetorically." No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. You know, how often does it mean? It doesn't necessarily mean killed. No, you didn't say kill him, uh, you know, but it often means killed. And again, I think I said this last time we talked about this. Forgive me. But I mean, if you could go in and look at usage, uh, how often does it mean killed? A fairly high percentage of the time, neutralized means put somebody down. And especially when you're using the fox in the henhouse language along with neutralized. I mean, this is clearly encouraging somebody to go out and kill. and neutralize Tucker. Um, but Josh Hammer tried to pass it off like we're a bunch of dummies because we're a bunch of dumb goy because we don't know it means what it obviously does not mean. But anyway, I got in the subject because, and I think Nick mentioned this. I've been watching more and more of his clips, and I don't want to become a Nick fanboy because, like I say, Nick, I support him wholly. His rants are at right now are wonderful. The fact that he's taking off, don't worry about Nick himself. It could be anybody. But the fact that this angry young Catholic who directly calls out the Jews is taking off and getting crossover appeal, right? He's getting anti-Zionist Jews who are sort of begrudgingly, or not so begrudgingly, these people in weird places like these Jews in odd, you know, in odd corners, like somewhat independent Jews like Glenn Greenwald and Dave Smith, are talking about him just, with no rancor at all, without the, the cringy, butt puckering qualifiers that we're supposed to always attach to, any mention of somebody like Nick, right? Like if we were where we're at just a couple of years ago, every time one of these guys mentioned Nick, you would have to sit through the first, few minutes of them saying, "No, make no mistake, I do not condone." He says, "I think he's awful." Blah blah blah. That's not even happening. You know, I mean, he's gaining appeal with black people, with all kinds of people. Anti-Semitism is the new thing, and I'm all for um, uh, normalizing anti-Semitism. I just am because you know that's a whole other subject. I could go on and on about that, but just for not because I think we're going to deport all the Jews or worse. Uh, Not that I think that's desirable or possible, um, but just because we can't have an honest discussion in large part because there's this whole, you know, because anti Semitism is the third rail of American life, of all public speech, of all rhetoric in the West. That needs to end because we are controlled by Zionists, um, and we are at a natural one of the ways that they've managed to disempower white Westerners in their own homes in American Europe is because uh, every other group is allowed to have their hate towards every other. You know what I mean? And Jewish, if you're Jewish, nobody's on your ass about, oh, your Uncle Moshe, he's really anti-Gentile, right? He's just horribly hateful toward Gentiles. So what? Nobody's telling you, oh yeah, you should cut ties with him. You should straighten him out. You know, that's just they're not policing their own ranks, which is their own family and friends, right? Nobody's telling black people, oh yeah, you're, you know, Uncle Marquise is really hateful and just talking shit about white people all day. Set him straight, man. No, you know, they just they're allowed to ha, yeah, that's funny. You know what I mean? But only white people are expected, to go and break from family over this shit, right? They especially love to separate children from their parents. Something that I was always taught growing up, when I was being brainwashed growing up, that's a Nazi thing, right? That was supposedly what the Hitler Youth was about, right? I remember seeing, that was the whole thing. You don't hear it a lot anymore. Uh, but oh yeah, the Nazis, which were actually the Nazis were pro-family, right? And a big part of their concern, one reason why there's all this revisionism around the Nazis and fascism is now that the family is wrecked, in the post-anti-Nazi era. We think, wait a minute, right? We go back. Obviously, the Nazis valued the family. Obviously, they were pro-family. Obviously, they weren't about um, splitting children from their parents. With that said, they were also revolutionary. So there was no doubt that there was, as we're seeing now, and it's probably scaring the shit out of all the right people, and I applaud it. What's happening now is kind of revolutionary with our friend, what's his name? Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes. Um, he's gaining traction with young people. He's gaining followers, especially with young people, and they're ragging on their boomer parents. Um, you know, but that's very different from what you see, what is a sort of tenet of the left, that, you kind of have to hate your parents if you're on the left, right? I mean, they grew up in racist America, and we have no tolerance for racism, even in the past. It's even retroactive. Our hatred of racism, right? It's retroactive in that we canceled George Washington because he owned slaves. We've canceled Lincoln, the great emancipator, because he was bad. He was hard on the Indians. You know. Anyway, I'm rambling again. I have to go back and check to see what you guys are saying. You guys aren't saying anything. Phil says re-education camps via DEI training. Yeah, I mean there's still a possibility. When Trump goes away and the Democrats gain control again and they reopen the borders, right? Mom Donnie and AOC, become the eminences of that side. It could happen very quickly. Uh, but I don't think so either. Everybody's calling out their bullshit. Everybody's calling them out. Yes, Phil, Uncle Moshe. Uh, Dionysus says, I don't think most Jews are doing this deliberately. It seems to be more accurate to say war is between Jews on the left and Jews on the right, and we are just caught in the fight. No, I don't agree with that. I mean, that's a thing, and I'm just, call me anti-Semitic. I don't care. Like I said, you should be anti-Semitic. You should be, um, you should be straining against this control. You should be kicking against this domination by this, albeit impressive and energetic, 2% of the population. But they hate us, and I don't want to see anymore. I don't want to. I don't want to ever again turn on my television and see a right-wing Jew arguing with a left-wing Jew about what the fuck my country is or means. Or talking about the founders. Shut the fuck up. They're not yours, right? You cannot have your exclusivity, right? Your specialness, your chosenness, right? Your claim to the Old Testament, which is not even, it's not even valid, right? The Jews claimed the Old Testament. They used to ignore it. They had the Pentateuch, they had the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible were important to Judaism, important to religious Jews at least. But the Old Testament as a whole did not become important to Jews until they started their forging their nationalism, until they started deciding, as part of the West, I mean, Jewish Zionism and nationalism are a perverse part the West. They are a perverse product of the West. It's just complicated. But, they did not start embracing all this shit, the Holy Land and all that, which is ironic. You know, they did not embrace all that aspect of it. Palestine and everything else didn't become a big thing until certain secular Jews reacting, both getting influenced by European nationalism and and also revolting against the inherent anti-Semitism of such as German nationalism, that they started forging this because they needed this. They started forging this whole romance of the Holy Land and their connection to it. And of course, we know now, and my fellow anti-Semites don't necessarily like to hear this, these Jews are, they have European blood. They lived in Europe, and they're, despite their separation and with Khazaria and everything else, also the Jews used to convert. People used to convert to Judaism. That's an elite development. Them closing off, making conversion very difficult and rare. There were mass conversions right up until this modern era when they felt the necessity to further separate themselves and define themselves as this nation, right? So it just, anyway, fuck that. We're not caught up in a fight between left and right wing Jews. We're caught up in a fight between Jews who want us to fucking die and fuck off, or just submit to this second class status in our own homelands, and you know, and ourselves. And I mean, I always say, I don't hate the Jews. I'm anti-Semitic, but I don't hate them. There's just too many Jews out there I like. Uh, you know, uh, Individually. You know, so what? I can still dislike. I don't even have to hate them as a group. You can characterize it however you want. Say I hate them. I don't care. I'm just saying. I just want to define what I'm feeling, and that is this group wants me dead. This group wants mine to go away, and mine is rapidly going away. On the trajectory we are on, our European heritage isn't going to mean anything. My German and Dutch Catholic heritage is going to mean nothing because there's been none of us left. And like the Jews, the prospect of that terrifies me. The prospect of that makes me fucking angry. The idea that anybody out there, for whatever they think, I don't give a fuck if they're self-deluded and think they're healing the world with this shit. Who cares? They're stupid. They're malicious. I don't give a fuck. They want me dead, essentially. They want my family dead. Fuck these people. They need to be fought tooth and nail. They need to be called out. They need to be grabbed by the fucking lapels and shaken and pushed up against the goddamned wall. And they get in their goddamn face, and say, motherfucker, no. Yeah, fuck is wrong with you? Oh, some Jews are, hey, I love the Coen brothers, right? I like Bob Dylan, right? Mel Brooks, he was a fucking prick for making Blazing Saddles, but it's the funniest movie in the world. you know, uh, so what? So fucking what? There are more important things. Uh, Dionysus says, I think Thailand has banned Israelis. God bless them. Phil the Kill says they're Jews first, leftists second after all. And I always say it's an awful thing. It really is. And despite everything I've just said, I think it's just terrible that we can't live in peace. But that's what we're all coming around to. Us and our Jewish friends are coming to we can't live in peace. And we see we're in this death spiral. Because the more we stand up and defend ourselves, the more angry Nick Fuentes rants are blasted out there. Jews, moderate Jews, Jews who could be reconciled to a more reasonable world, Jews who individually don't want us to die, are nonetheless appalled reasonably, scared by this, angered by this, reacting just the way I react to their bullshit. So we're getting separated. But, I think this is the thinking of a lot of people. They're thinking, yeah, Dennis, or more importantly, yeah, Nick, all you angry anti Semitic young men out there, just cool it with the anti Semitism because you're scaring away all our friendly Jews who could be, allies or, are nice people. You're radicalizing them. But yeah, it's a fucking tragedy and I hate it. And it makes everything more difficult. But the option is either we shut up and accept the suzerainty of fucking Ben Shapiro and Josh Hammer, right? Accepted the poor shit of those mediocre little pricks, right? Uh, or not, or this. Well, let's have it out. If we have to have it out, we're going to have it out. And I don't blame us. I don't blame Europeans. Uh, and it doesn't matter. Blame. This is where I get tired of people, especially Westerners, Christians, because of our Christian heritage, more so really because of our European blood and, you know, what we've evolved into because of the unique land we inhabited in Europe, the cold winters and everything else. Every racist pseudoscientific idea has a very obvious and valid point. We developed into these people that are really uh, prone to high trust society, prone to tolerance, and prone to all of these things that the Jewish ideas of racism, Jewish ideas of critical race theory, and everything else hold us white Westerners to be uniquely capable of racism and intolerance. It's fucking Orwellian. It's the exact opposite of reality. So don't fucking tell me to be reasonable with these people. Right? And don't tell me, oh, shucks. I know you guys aren't. I'm just saying other people out there. No, fuck that. It has to be, we have to hash it out before it goes any farther. We have to bring this out into the open and duke it out, you know. Because if we had anything like consensus on our side, if we had anything like the cultural unity that our enemies have, they wouldn't stand a fucking chance. You know, they wouldn't stand a fucking chance. We didn't take over the world because we're the toughest or bravest or even smartest, you know. But we had a spark, and we have special something that led us to create the modern world. And I would hate to see us create the modern world only to be crushed by it because, because Jews, can't reconcile themselves to it because they want to hold on to this cherished notion of God favors them and everything else. Phil says people were stupid enough to think libertarians like Walter Black actually believed in principles. When 10/7 happened, he went full mask off, bloodthirsty tribe. 30 years he had hid that side. I don't know who Walter Black is. I did not see this obnoxious video. Uh, let's look up the obnoxious video Dionysus is offering. Let's see if I can. I have to go. Let's see. Do I have it here? Here it is. Oh my God. All right. Yeah. And, they keep sending these supposedly attractive women out here. So this is Arian. Irene Wexler. And she's going to tell us an open letter to the Groypers and us, I presume.
Your circumstances are unjust and that you are worthy of sympathy. I think you deserve help. I think your circumstances are unjust and that you are worthy of sympathy. But you should want to fix your life, not burn the world down out of
Oh, shut the fuck up. I don't think I can even go any farther. This is 21 minutes.
spite. I get it. Your souls are so whipped raw with rejection and failure that you feel transgressed.
Oh, God, the passive aggression right from the start, right? Oh, I'm sympathetic because you're losers. No, this is Luke Ford's, don't you have agency, Goyim bullshit. We are calling out your bullshit. You're winning. No, you're winning. Your stupid shit has won. Yeah, you've carried the day thus far with all your bullshit about men and straight, white, Christian men, but we're calling it out. This is the process, sweetheart. God damn, that's an unattractive woman. This is the process by which we don't care about your goddamn what you if we you think we're losers or not. You know, we don't want to get with you, any more than you want to get with us. My God, could you imagine going home with this? Did you forget the hummus? You forgot, you got the wrong hummus. You know I don't like the Mediterranean hummus. It's not even hummus.
Aggression and provocation are all that you're capable of. This is my open letter to the Groypers from a Jewish woman. And
Hmm.
I'm doing this because I refuse to abandon you. Yes, you, my fellow citizens who are clear.
Oh, God. This is the definition of crying out in pain as they strike you. We just leave that. We're just going to leave that. Oh, okay, Dionysus, you're right. That is fucking obnoxious. Phil said, yeah, this Sienta is lecturing about burning the world down. So stop all the kvetching about Gaza already and let us get on with it. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Normally, she did the fellow citizen. Yeah. Get her the mask, right? The plain, the normie Gentile mask, right? Underneath, out of frame, sure, her hands are just automatically. She doesn't even know her hands are doing this. They do this in the womb, right? Somebody make this meme for me. It's an ultrasound photo of a baby in the womb, and it's got a hook and it's doing this. Yeah, just shut the fuck up, Ariane. And besides, look, so I know you're unattractive. We all here see you as unattractive. I mean, look at this shit. But I'm also looking at you thinking most guys will rate you attractive. And certainly the old geezer Jews who pass out the money, for, Hasbarans probably think, she's a nice looking piece of ass. Let's prop her up. So I'm saying you're getting propped up because you're a putative piece of poon. And you've got 4.26 thousand subscribers, which is nothing on YouTube, right? Nothing on fucking YouTube. Four and a quarter thousand subscribers. You know, you're so obnoxious that they all the Hasbar and shekels in the world can't prop you up. Um, so anyway, yeah. Anyway, got to do more. Says grew up admiring a lot of comedic minds. So many now don't even watch. Mel Brooks, Albert Brooks, Marx Brothers, many actors. Yeah, uh, you know, I know Mel Brooks. Albert Brooks still seems like an okay guy, but I mean, they all reveal themselves then, and I don't even blame them. It's just like I said, it's a tragedy. There's this thing between us, and I think for our side, the sooner we get past our nice guy Western Christian sort of notions that for us to hate them, or for us to fight them, there has to be hate, and for us to hate them, they have to be bad. Now, I've always said, and this never gains traction with my fellow pro-whites because they're mostly dumb. They're not on my level. No, I'm kidding. But I know I really do think it's a little too advanced for most of us. But I always say, even if they're good people, even if you looked over at the Jews and each individual, you could possibly say this individually. You pluck one out, and they're more likely to be more law-abiding and more agreeable than one of us. Even if they're good people, that doesn't change a thing because a group of people, there's the individual and there's the group. And if that group is opposed to you, even if their ends aren't malicious, they're just pursuing their ends, you know. Um, and the Jews have some insane ends in mind, group wise. If, in case you haven't noticed, uh, it doesn't matter. So you have to be somewhat amoral. You really have to be somewhat cynical and amoral about it and say, I don't care if they're nice people. That's that's incidental. They're nice people. In fact, uh, their intelligence, for instance, whose intelligence is an admirable trait. But if it's someone who seeks my destruction, whether deliberately or just incidentally, is endowed with intelligence, it's awful. You know, I mean, nobody wants to hear it because it has to be cast as good versus, it has to be cast as a Manichaean struggle, especially for them they're Jews, right? Look at the way they gaslight themselves, right? It's just endlessly, uh, you know, oh, woe is us, and oh, they're so awful, right? And these are people, who have high intelligence and they have, for all the Freudian horse shit out there, they do nonetheless have a good understanding of psychology. I mean, you could not dominate media and propaganda they would do without having a superior sense of human psychology. Um, in fact, so much so that they effectively gaslight themselves, like this dopey girl here. You know, I mean, and remember, yeah, they're you know, um, even among Jews, most people aren't that so smart that they really are our level guys. They're not as sophisticated like us. I mean, if the average IQ of Jews is 105 or something, I don't know about you. Uh, I don't like to talk about my IQ, but I'm well beyond 105. 105 is pretty goddamn mediocre in my book. So about half of them, are 105 and below IQ. You know what I mean? And they have this image of themselves as if every one of them is, Einstein, right? And that every one of us is, Cletus from The Simpsons. Uh, but of course, not only that half of them are dumb cattle. Yes, you cattle. Uh, we, by our numbers, in our superior numbers, have far more high IQ people. If only we could get them all together in the same fucking herd and going in the same directions, we would just roll over these fucking people. We would just roll the fuck over them, right? So fuck them and their bullshit, But like I said, I'll miss the Coen brothers. I'll miss Steely Dan, you know. Uh, I'll miss all those good people. Our own glib medley. Uh, but if our survival depends on separating from them and all that, it's a bargain. It's a fucking bargain. Gotta do more says never cared about it until they kind of shoved their chosenness on me. No, like I said, again, it's a shonda. It's a horrible, tragic shame um, that we can't live together. It would be nice if we could live together. It would be nice if that world that I was gaslit into thinking existed, or maybe sort of existed briefly in America, not really, where Jews and Gentile lived together in the West, and it was, not if not a matter of indifference, not a big deal, you know, who was Jewish and who was Gentile, that we could, in fact, share the same country, be countrymen, and thrive together, you know, enjoy each other. But Israel kind of fucked that all up, didn't it? I mean, I used to think, wow, maybe Israel is the solution. You've got your own country now, Jews. You've got your own country. You're just like everybody else in that regard. Uh, you don't have to feel cheated. You don't have to feel like you're in exile, right? You have that country to go to if you want. Note that most Jews still rather want to live here or in Europe than go to fucking Israel, which sounds horrible, by the way. But I used to think, oh, you've got that now, and that maybe will ultimately solve our problem. Oh, Dennis. Oh, young, stupid Dennis. You moron. Fat fucking chance. The existence of it's just a malignant tumor that's growing, you know? And it's not our goddamn fault. I mean, it's only our fault to the extent that we're weak and stupid and let ourselves be dominated by the Jews and thus dominated by Zionists. But Israel is the worst aspect of it. It was bad enough that Jews were leading all the most destructive revolutionary movements that were destroying our families and our traditions and our histories and everything else. It was bad enough that they had to lead the sexual revolution and civil rights and everything they thought improved their position, you know, in the West. But then Israel becomes this monstrosity that it is. And Israel becomes, um, this drag, to put it lightly, on the U.S. It becomes this means by which we destroy, where we shed all our power, where we just bleed out all our genuine power and influence globally. Remember soft power? Forget that. I mean, the only thing holding American dominance together now, um, it's going to go away for China's economic dominance anyway. But the only thing holding together American global dominance now, to the extent that it still exists, is our military might. I mean, they used to fear us and kind of envy us, or they used to fear us and emulate us. They used to fear us and respect us. Now they just fear us. Now they just fear us, and they don't really have reason to fear us. We would not win a war with China. If we get into this stupid involvement in Venezuela, it'll just be another disaster. If we get involved in Iran, uh, I mean, the best we could hope to do is bomb Iran a little bit and then fuck off. But if we actually put boots on the ground, which I don't think will happen because of this, it would be an absolute disaster. We haven't won a war since World War II. And that's a war we shouldn't have won. You know, Dionysus says, I think intelligence is overrated. Yeah, I think it is too. I mean, well, or another way of looking at it is, if it's not supported by other important things, um, it doesn't, you know, I would call myself one of those intelligent underachievers. So I can't really call myself intelligent. I've done too many stupid things. I've been too stupid generally. but I know I'm somebody who was supposed to have advanced farther in life. When I was a kid in school, they were putting me in the advanced placement classes and all that shit. Oh, you're so smart. They probably thought I had a future before me. The problem is I didn't. The problem is I have this horrible, horrible laziness and nihilism. Yeah, that is kind of related. Anyway, we were on the subject of stochastic terrorism, and I was talking about, and I said Nick Fuentes mentioned it too, that I think he used the term stochastic terrorism um, regarding something Shapiro said. So they've said these things about Tucker and about Nick that, again, stochastic terrorism is supposed to be any sort of fiery speech, and it somehow only comes from the right, and it somehow became a fad, and that totally ignored what would definitely qualify as stochastic terrorism during the the summer of 2020 and the BLM riots. Just about the same time that this idea was kind of picking up steam. Stochastic terrorism, yeah. Trump, he demonizes immigrants and thus causes violence. Forget the fact that there's no fucking trend in violence against immigrants or Jews or black people, like they always say. But, supposedly there was all this awful speech, and Trump was just a godsend in that regard to them with his funny and offensive and often careless speech. So they get this idea of stochastic terrorism going, and 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 they're ignoring what would be a great example first with BLM and everything else. Um, but there's, you know, whatever you think of the idea, and I don't think much of it. I think they just put there should be a word for this. You put a phrase, you give a title to something, and you think that transformed it. You know, uh, it's gaslighting. We give a title to something that is not new. That's it's just something we've always dealt with. Let me give it a title, stochastic terrorism, and transform it in the public mind. Oh yeah, there's this new thing, and they try to characterize it as a new thing. The stochastic terrorist model was introduced in 2003 in a paper by a guy named Dr. Gordon Wu, a quote unquote catastrophist working on terrorism risk analysis for the insurance industry after 9/11. In 2002, the Congress passed the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act, which mandated insurance companies offer terrorism coverage to big time clients. Remember Larry Silverstein, owner of the Twin Towers, or leaseholder, was eventually paid $4.5 billion for his losses, and that's all very suspicious, as we know. But at the time, and I remember this, younger people who don't remember 9/11 as well perhaps won't remember it, but after 9/11, we thought this was a new normal. This is going to happen again. There are going to be more attacks. There are going to be more big attacks. Maybe there'll be small attacks. We talked about all the possible things that we're going to do. Um, you know, because we thought it had been revealed to us that all of a sudden there's this great mass of potential terrorists out there that were going to eventually find their ways to the U.S. and Europe and engage. We speculated on the things they might do. Man, all they need to do, I remember somebody saying this: show up in a shopping mall, a couple of guys with AKs just plant themselves at the food court at the shopping mall, jump up, start throwing grenades and blasting away, you know. A couple of those would be enough to shut down the country, right? Um, it never happened. That all, of course, makes the whole 9/11 thing more and more suspicious, you know, that maybe they had to be helped along to do this ridiculously spectacular and successful attack. Bring down the Twin Towers, bring down that other building somehow without even touching it. That, which to me is the building 7 collapse is the most suspicious aspect of it all, right? And we just watched that happen, and at the time people were like, "Oh, okay, it was damaged." Thing falls in on its own footprint like a controlled demolition, just like the Twin Towers did. For no fucking reason. All the other buildings around there are standing. Like, why this one? Anyway, this guy Wu introduced the idea of stochastic terrorism. Now, Wu's point of view was more right wing. He took the Bush administration seriously. He cited neoconservative writers. He accepted the doctrine of preemption. This is before we got entangled in Iraq. This was 2002. And he introduced this idea of, what is it, 2003? Uh, he introduced the phrase stochastic terrorism. Uh, and then the Daily Kos took it up in 2011. Um, and somebody over at the Daily Kos wrote this: the stochastic terrorism is the use of mass communications to stir up random lone wolves. Remember, lone wolves was a phrase, a popular faddish phrase. To stir up random lone wolves to carry out violent or terrorist acts that are statistically predictable but individually unpredictable. This is what occurs when bin Laden releases a video that stirs random extremists halfway around the globe to commit a bombing or shooting. This is also the term for what Beck, O'Reilly, Hannity, and others do. Those, of course, are all Fox News guys uh, who are, not very right wing, and they're all, sort of conventional pro Israel, uh, quaintly um, mild by today's standard, really. But this is 2011 and it's Daily Kos. And this is what led directly and predictably to a number of cases of ideologically motivated murder similar to the Tucson shootings. And forgive me, I don't remember what the Tucson shootings were. Presumably it was a right wing. 2011, maybe that was when that congresswoman was shot by a lunatic. In which case, it wouldn't even count as stochastic terrorism. In which case, so what was the woman's name? Her husband was an astronaut. He himself uh, served in Congress later. Somebody help me out here if you can remember her name. In Arizona. Uh, this guy who was totally fucking nuts. Uh, Tucson shooting 2011. Um, yeah, Gabby Giffords. Okay. So Daily Kos is even more full of shit than I thought here, because they're trying to say, and this and in fact, he's kind of clumsily pointing out the problem with the idea of stochastic terrorism. The guy who shot Gabby Giffords was just crazy as fuck, and he was smoking marijuana all day, every day. Um, that was the least of his problems, but he was already crazy, and he was just smoking weed all day. He was schizophrenic, hearing voices and shit. Uh, and he posted somewhere some ramblings that weren't particularly political. He, in fact, wasn't very political. In fact, if I recall correctly at the time, of course, they tried to assign to him right wing status because Giffords was a Democrat. Um, but I think the only thing they had was that he's talking about the gold standard. Excuse me, incoherently talking about the gold standard, and so there was nothing that suggested this guy was right wing or left wing. He was just buddy crazy, right? Um, and this is the problem with stochastic terrorism as an idea, because and this he's not the first. There have been a couple of guys like this where they were just batshit, um, but they are listening to all this stuff we're talking about, how all this fiery rhetoric going back and forth, and they're reacting to it. They don't understand it, they just see the emotion of it, right? And they're just seizing on like it's not the Tyler Robinson character necessarily. There was another guy before him. I think one of the potential Trump shooters, for instance, um, he had posted a bunch of crazy ramblings that were all over the place. They were left for here and right wing there. And I'm no psychologist, but I'm reading this shit and I'm thinking, it's not that the guy has a political point of view, really. He's just grabbing the most sensational stuff, you know, just randomly grabbing stuff and throwing it together. He doesn't have a real understanding of the issues and the conversations he's paying attention to. He's just the only connecting thread here is that he's grabbing the things that are most emotional, and it catches eye like shiny things, you know. And this is the problem with the idea of stochastic terrorism. These guys, there is a potential. I mean, it does in fact happen that crazy people will seize on things. Uh, and you don't have to be batshit. You just have to be, a head case of right or left wing persuasion to seize on any given political issue as an excuse to go out and shoot people up. You know what I mean? And and they know it. I mean, the more sophisticated people pushing things like stochastic terrorism know it. That's why it's only applied to the right wing. You know, if they thought it was going to be equally applied, they would shut the fuck up tomorrow. In fact, they eventually did. Maybe, perhaps, we watched the stochastic terror dynamic playing out in the summer of 2020 when people were actually getting killed on the fringes of the 2020 rioting on behalf of George Floyd. You a couple of them in Portland, like the one guy who got shot in the chest, the Proud Boy who got shot in the chest by a head case who'd taken up with Antifa. Anyway, so that's stochastic terrorism as these guys imagined it. But there's something else that happens. Like I said, in 2021, they were calling it a new form of political violence, which is another sort of misconception, gaslighting fallacy that they're trying to push out there. It was nothing new about it. You know what I mean? I mean, Franz Ferdinand was shot by a radical who had read pamphlets. Uh, Peter Stolypin was shot by a Jewish guy, I think, who was radicalized by what he read and saw, radicalized by Russia of 1907 or whenever that happened. There's nothing new going on. But, like I said, they have to have a shiny new phrase to apply to the old thing to make you think it's new. And they have to pretend that, such as Trump, though Trump was, like I said, a godsend to them because he was very different. We hadn't seen anything like Trump. We hadn't seen anybody who was going to come out there and just kick the door down rhetorically and just say things. And we hadn't seen, frankly, someone as buffoonish and careless as Trump in speaking at that level. Nonetheless, there was no new form of political violence. In fact, the word stochastic, I thought, that's an interesting word. I mean, I honestly think they they like that word because it sounds violent. To me, stochastic sounds like a fucking type of cannon. Uh, and so I started looking it up, and I think, yeah, there are two um, there are two aspects of that word that make it sound violent. The Here it is. The plosive consonant combination, which is the k, the K sound in the middle. K is plosive in that, it's that expenditure of breath. That's always associated with violence. Um, and the hard consonant combination that it starts with, st, stochastic, is an inherently violent, kind of aggressive sounding word. And terrorism is too. Uh, in the word terror, in the structure of the word, it's to suggest of violence. And I honestly think they fell in love with this phrase because of that. It sounds scary and violent. And also, stochastic is an obscure phrase, you know. You probably never, I don't think I ever encountered it before I started hearing this phrase, stochastic terrorism. I'd never heard the word stochastic. So this is another very familiar method of gaslighting, in that we give it a word, an obscure word, to lend it the gloss of the scholarly, right? It's a word that you don't know, regular guy, you've never heard before. It sounds fancy, or in this case, it sounds scary. And it creates that critical theory, that common critical theory method of fake scholasticism, of fake scholarly, oh, these are serious people, high IQ people with these very sophisticated ideas, because I don't know what this fucking word means. Uh, anyway, beyond their notions of stochastic, though, there is something that, and I think they've cited it themselves, you know, and I mentioned this last time. Um, I've mentioned this before, forgive me, but I have to mention it again. Um, there's the famous line, and people have used it on both sides of this argument 2 or 3 times. I've seen other people pick this up. There's the famous line from Beckett, right? Did I play that? I think probably already played this last time, but so long. It's where the king supposedly said, and supposedly this happened in real life. The king, I forget which king it was, says of well, no one rid me of this meddlesome priest. And so then they went out and they assassinated Beckett. Supposedly, there was, a question of whether or not the king actually called for them to assassinate the Beckett, uh, the bishop who was giving him all this trouble. Um, this has been invoked a few times. I think Steve Saylor used it in some other context. Uh, that this, in fact, does happen. And I'm saying that this is what happened when Josh Hammer said neutralize Tucker. This has happened when Shapiro has said a couple of things about Fuentes. That this is not just, this stupid idea, frankly, of stochastic terrorism. Watch what you say, guys, because, you'll be responsible when some crazy picks it up and goes to commit violence. Keep in mind that the idea of stochastic terrorism, this frankly dishonest idea, uh, you know, tries to broaden the net, tries to widen the net they're trying to throw over free speech by saying it doesn't even have to be deliberate. It just has to be, careless. And think about it. Who are they talking? They're probably talking, maybe they're thinking specifically of Donald Trump, who was nothing if not careless with his speech. But this, again, is something else that's not new. Will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest? It's not new, um, and it's different from so-called stochastic terrorism. And I don't say we should say you can't do it. Josh Hammer can't say neutralize, even though he very clearly, what Josh Hammer was doing, and I mean, I don't think I'm going too far out on a limb here to suggest he knows exactly what he's doing. He knows that it's very possible someone might actually go and try to harm Tucker Carlson. After reading that, it's like he's speaking in code, but openly out in the public. Sort of like a mafia. Mafias, the mobsters talking to each other. He needs to go away, right? You know, mafia speak, where it's very clear what a guy is saying, but it's not uh, explicit, thus can't be used in a court of law if somebody's wearing a wire, right? He needs to go. Oh, well, it's very clear to who he's speaking to. He needs to be killed. But in a court of law, it's not necessarily proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Honestly, I think what Josh Hammer was doing, what Shapiro has bordered on doing, is putting out there the suggestion, not just to crazies, but to, I don't know, Bill Ackman or Miriam Adelson or any billionaire hyper Zionist out there. Um, hey, why doesn't somebody, make this happen, solve this problem? I'm, you know, I'm not saying, but I'm saying, right? He needs to go. Tucker Carlson needs to go, right? I mean, I honestly, when I consider Josh Hammer's words, I think that's a more likely explanation than anything else. Like I said, it's way more likely than his explanation for what he meant. Oh, I just meant shut him up with a counter arguments or deplatform him. Why wouldn't you say deplatform? You know, why wouldn't you just say that? You guys, I hear the deplatforming language coming, and Levin is using that phrase himself, right? And it's just fun watching Levin. Maybe we'll play a little Levin. It's just been fun watching him lose his shit. He's such an unattractive, unappealing human being. And somebody else pointed out that Ben Shapiro appears to be wearing a bigger kippah now. He was on trigonometry recently, right? I mean, it used to be that I would see these clips all the time of Ben 3 or 4 years ago before, when people, a lot of people um, who no longer do, um, took Ben seriously or, didn't take him to be a complete asshole. You never knew he was wearing a kippah. You always saw him from up front, and that little tiny hat is on the back of his head. You don't even notice. He's got black hair. You don't even notice. Now he's on trigonometry, and the thing is fucking giant, right? It's like, I swear to God, I think he's wearing a bigger kippah now. You know, he's making sure you can see it now. You know, it's it's a thing. Uh, fuck. Jake Evans says the only one more annoying than Mark Levin is Laura Loomer. Yeah, and her, God forbid, God help me, but I think years ago, thinking that Laura Loomer wasn't bad looking, right? Uh, and now I'm seeing pictures of her. I think they're altered. This is something I hate to see people on my side do it. It's just so cheesy and stupid. But people post pictures now and they'll just tweak them to make their enemies look worse than they actually look. Laura Loomer is weird enough looking that you don't have to tweak them. But I'm seeing pictures now and I think, holy shit. Either they're tweaking the pictures I'm seeing of Laura Loomer or that bitch is getting work done that is just very unwise. Just looking scary. Jake Evans points out Trump called MTG a traitor. That's why she understandably is afraid for her life. Yeah, she has every reason to be. Um, and, even though I ridicule the idea of stochastic terrorism, anybody in public life uh, is at risk because it's a nation of 330 million plus out here. We're all fucking crazy. Some of us are very crazy and have the potential for violence. And as I was pointing out before, it doesn't even have to be a person who's necessarily got a clear political idea. It's not necessarily radicalized. It's just any crazy who picks up on all this heat that they see coming from us, as well as the radicalized. And they can come from both sides. And they can come from what you think is your own side. You know what I mean? Like I don't believe it, but the idea that it was a quote unquote Groyper who shot Charlie Kirk is not beyond the realm of possibility. Some stupid, fired up young guy could have thought, yeah, I'm tired of that Zionist cuck sellout Charlie Kirk. I'm going to go shoot him. I think that's why people on the left tried to make that boat float. So fucking stupid, though. I mean, I didn't even know what to think about the Charlie Kirk assassination at this point. It's very suspicious, but, you know, I just know, though, just from experience, what I can confidently predict is it won't be resolved. This guy, Tyler Robinson, will probably be convicted, but we'll never really know. And the official version will be maybe true, maybe even likely that Tyler Robinson, actually did it. But by no means should anyone say, oh, yeah, case closed. It's just, we've seen too much shit. We've seen too much. We've seen far, far too much. We've been lied to too much. Um, and it's almost like at this point, you're better off disbelieving uh, most things than believing. Like I used to think, and it still seems like it was fairly well based at the time to think, oh, I'm not liberal, I'm right wing, but I can see confidently the bias in such as the New York Times. I can see confidently the bias in Democratic rhetoric. And I can still suss out the truth, even listening to those, sources. But that's gone by the wayside. It's just all gaslighting all the time, and it's just been revealed. Not just the deliberate gaslighting, but just the whole idea. I mean, if you're a boomer or a Xer, um, you look back on, your schooling and the culture you grew up in and everything, and you realize what a big lie it's all been without it being necessarily a lot of direct lies. The whole post World War II culture of Hitler and the Nazis as the ultimate evil, uh, and Jews as our great wise uncle constantly. You gotta laugh. Fuck, who the fuck do you don't want to be hated, Jews? Stop presenting yourself as the wise uncle. You're gonna lecture me on morality because black people are mistreated. Have you seen black people? You fucking people don't live with black people. You, you Jews are more afraid of black people than I am. You Jews, I know more black people. I'm more in tune with black people than you will ever be. Fucking Jew from fucking Manhattan and gonna lecture me about, right? Get the fuck out of here. Go away, Moshi. Just fuck off, man. Go away and send back, one of the cool Jews, one of the more relaxed, Jews. Like, I would love to hang with you, smart, funny people. Let's keep it at smart and funny, but don't pretend to be that wise Jewish uncle. Because that's another thing I look back and you see all these fucking movies that you consumed, right? And you can't even clear them out of your goddamn psyche. They're there. They're gonna stick. They're sticking in the corners of your psyche, despite your deliberate enlightenment. Despite the disillusion and your deliberate seeking out of enlightenment to dispel all this mist they've been cramming down your, as a young fucking innocent child, they were doing to you. They're evil. It's fucking evil. As a young innocent child, they were cramming this shit down your throat. And it was always the wise Jewish uncle. Think of the movie The Apartment, classic movie. Billy Wilder was it? And it's about the young executive, and the older executives are taking advantage of some nice girl, right? And the whole thing is about the young executive. I think his moral dilemma is he has, first he gets drawn in, and and all the executives are very Gentile, very much of that, the guy from Father Knows Best is the bad CEO type who's taken advantage of Shirley MacLaine, this young, beautiful Shirley MacLaine. And Jack Lemmon, playing a Gentile, is the young, the young, ambitious executive who covers for him for a time, but then comes around morally to help put an end to this. I don't remember exactly how the story goes. Part of the reason why he does is because this stereotypical Jewish type guy down the hall in his own apartment building, tells him to be a mensch, do the right thing. That character was so fucking common. He just kept coming and was never explicitly, rarely explicitly was the guy Jewish, but it was made clear along the way. This was a Jewish guy counseling a white Gentile, and this was repetitive and all the time. You obnoxious fucking people, how fucking dare you? Like I said before, for all the, sins you can lay on Western civilization, and I don't say you can't, for all the excesses, for all the arrogance that might have come out of the West, we remain, I think, the most tolerant, disastrously tolerant, some of the best people morally. We practically invented this shit that you keep pretending to cite. Oh, yeah, you're going to tell us how to be good. Fuck off. Fuck right off. Have you opened the goddamn Torah? Have you looked at the Old Testament? Have you noticed the the tenets of your religion? Because if you were these moral paragons, you would reject it. You would fucking reject it. And if really ethnicity is, if race is just the product of racist pseudoscience, if nationalism is evil, right? If ethno-nationalism is the greatest evil, then you would reject Judaism. You would reject this whole heritage that you hold so clear, so dearly. Shut the fuck up already. Shut the fuck up already about it. God damn you. Ah. Phil the Kill says, when was the last time Levin had an organic audience? I suspect he's repulsed anyone still around and remotely concerned about the U.S. Yeah, Tucker started talking shit about Levin about a year ago. I recall him talking about Levin, you know, um, saying just that. He's, talking about Fox News. He said, "Yeah, it's kind of fake over there. Mark Levin has a show um, that has no appeal, that nobody really watches, yet Mark Levin, and Tucker didn't say it outright, but what does Levin show you? That the Jews control the media, that the Zionist Jews control the media. And so you're Mark Levin and you're getting a fraction of a respectable audience, yet they carve out a spot for you on Fox News, and you're safe. Your fat little ass is safely ensconced in Fox News, even though you can't draw. You cannot put an ass in a seat yourself. You know, and everybody's already watching. Is already on your side. So I don't even know what the point is. But he's there. You know, he's there like the doorman. He's there like the old greeter in front of Costco. You know, there he is. And it's just proof that you know they're leaving money on the table. They're spending money by burning this time slot, by giving it to the least appealing, least interesting, uh, least charismatic human being you could ever see. I remember watching him once before I really knew what he was about. He once wrote a book about race, which was well received, and it was debunking the idea of racism and inherent racial equality. Now, in retrospect, we can see what he's on about, and a lot of Jews do this because it's really about setting up the more important ideas of Jews. We're smarter than everybody else, therefore we get to do what we're doing. Shut up and follow Goyim. We're going to lead the world. We're the chosen. We're the bestest. But anyway, I remember watching him and thinking, what the fuck? He's talking, and he talks like this, right? He doesn't move. His head does not move, and he's just hunched in on himself, right? He's this little fucking troll, and he talks like it just, there's no fucking projection at all coming out there. Um, yeah, so, I mean, I saw that and I thought, what the fuck? You know, I wasn't even thinking about shit at that point very much, but I was just thinking, what the hell is this about? I have not heard that guy Truth Teller on the Twitter Spaces, uh, Jake. I'll keep an eye out. Phil the Kill says, if you've ever seen World at War, one of the best archives of real World War II footage ever created, they had a chapter for most major aspects of World War II, released in the early 70s. The Holo was the shortest part. Well, as Ron Unz has pointed out, Churchill, who was a good and prolific writer, wrote a long history of World War II as part of, I think, his whole, he wrote about World War II. He was there at the front, as Prime Minister of Britain. And I think there's nothing about the Holocaust in there. Eisenhower talked about the awful condition of people in concentration camps because of typhus and starvation. But he never said anything about any evidence of gas chambers, for instance. The Holocaust was not even a sort of a common phrase up until 1979, I think it was, when the miniseries The Holocaust introduced us really to this age of the Holocaust industry and the Holocaust sort of religious culture that we're now swamped in. I remember Tony Judt, a Jewish guy who wrote an interesting popular history book called Post-War. It was all about Europe right after World War II up until the 90s or so. And he talks about how the Holocaust was not an overwhelming issue even for Jews in the first decades after the war. He talks about how people who survived the camps and came back to the US or to Israel or to Western Europe, how they were actually not even well respected necessarily. They were kind of treated like the schmucks who stayed behind and got swept up. You know, all of this stuff sort of built over time till we get, till it sort of broke with, stupid, insane ideas about lampshades and soap and masturbation machines and all this other horse shit. But like I always say, uh, maybe they were gassing. Maybe they were. I mean, obviously, the idea that they gassed 6 million, which even the, so-called scholars of the Holocaust don't say that. It's just that's how it gets mixed up in your distracted mind when you grow up like I did in the 70s and 80s. 6 million gassed. And of course, even the most extreme claims, it's 6 million total people died supposedly from executions and gassings and also typhus and starvation and everything else. Nonetheless, um, I don't care. I don't care if it was 6 million people gassed. I don't, I mean, if, and goes back to what I was saying before, how you have to be kind of amoral. You have to be kind of cynical. You have to be kind of a bastard and say, and this is how we are uniquely white, Christian, Westerners, probably Northern Europeans most of all, are uniquely susceptible to this idea. And they, it's like the Jews either, you know, knew it and acted on it, or just instinctually sensed it, or just, it's just, or it's just an incidental thing. Nonetheless, presenting the white Western world with this idea that the Holocaust is the greatest horror ever, it makes you Christian, good Christian Westerner, just roll over and think, as the joke goes, oh, well, I guess I don't want a country. Oh, well, I guess I don't, You're right, I'm a prick. You're right, I'm evil. We are so susceptible to that. And I think, I mean, it's obvious, uniquely, and a lot of people maybe don't like, to talk about evolution, but I think it is evolutionary psychology would very much explain it. How we are uniquely susceptible to this shaming process. We can be shamed to the point where we will lay down and accept our demise on behalf of humanity. We really are doing just that. We're doing just that. Uh, Not that every single person is a shitlib who's, masochistically liberal, ethnomasochist. It's not that. It's also that even those of us who fight back, like me and you, say, don't have even, and we're still affected by it. We're still, it's this bright fucking, it's kryptonite. The Holocaust is our kryptonite. I mean, we don't know what to do. We're presented with it, and the Jews are just so good at telling stories, right? They're just so good at telling stories and crafting narratives. Um, that they're presenting to gullible whites, not us. You and me, we're sophisticated. But they present to gullible but good hearted whites, ironically enough, this idea that you are, in fact, the world's evil, right? Susan Sontag. Fucking Susan Sontag. Yeah. Like she would last 2 minutes in our world, right? These public intellectuals of the past would not last 2 minutes. Susan Sontag would get ratioed off of Twitter in a fucking day. But Susan Sontag, of course, what white man is the cancer of the world? Shut the fuck up, bitch. Go back up in your fucking tower looking over fucking Central Park and shut up. Go pet your cat. You fucking lesbian fuck. Anyway, anyway, I just got off on a tangent, but what I was saying at the start of all that is what I've always said, that whether the Holocaust is the greatest evil ever done, as they tell me, or a giant hoax is of no matter, no difference. Not, it doesn't matter. Greatest crime in the world, I don't care. I still want to live. I still want you to live. I still want 1,000 years from now there to be a group of people that came from Northern Europe, that came out of what is now Germany, what is now Holland, where my parents came out of. You know, uh, and there, I want that culture, a significant remnant of that culture to exist, to thrive, to be part of the world, to be influencing the world, to be at least something more than a museum piece, right? That's all. That's all. That's all I ask for. And if you say we're evil, yeah, I kind of wish we were. Really, I mean, I'm kind of ashamed of what I see us as. Weak, good people, weak Christians. I'm not very Christian, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not Christian. I just reject the tenets. That's outright, like in a Nietzschean way. I do not accept them. Um, you know, yeah. Oh, you say we're evil. You say we're uniquely evil. I think we sound pretty cool. Maybe that's how I'll just play it from now on. That's right. We're good. We're good. We're evil. We're the baddest motherfuckers on the planet. Don't you forget it. Yeah, I like that. Everybody likes to play the villain, right? Uh, hey, Gishrai. Dionysus says our virtues are most often only our vices in disguise. La Rochefoucauld. Yeah, yeah. Or, what's the old virtue is uh, something paid device. I don't know what it is. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Gishrai says, long time listener, first time caller. Yeah, I remember you. Good to see you. Very good to see you. Phil says they think if they can just finger wave and lecture more, they can snuff the counterculture bad thought out. Yeah, we're way past that. It's an exciting time. It's a little bit scary what's happening, but it is necessary that we have to have this out. Things have to come to a head because the only alternative is just we get back on that long, slow decline. Let's have it out. I like that. Yeah. Let's let's fight. It's more fun to fight. It's more fun to fight than it to just sit there and get needled by you know, by somebody like Irene Wexler. Sweetheart, just give it up. Don't even try. Don't even try. Right? You're not that. You're not that. You're not all that cute. Frankly, you're Something's off about the way you look. I think it's the ugly coming out through your expressions. You know, beauty is only skin deep, but ugly goes to the bone. That was, that's always been a really awful, shitty joke, but it's true in another way, in an unintended way. You know, beauty is only skin deep, but ugly, the ugly of the heart, that can radiate right through a beautiful face and throw it off a little bit, right? You ever get that feeling? That woman, she's really beautiful, but something sinister about her, you know. All right. I think we're done here. I think we're done here. Yeah. Unless you guys have something to add. Do you have something to add? I'm looking for a video on this. Looking for my outros. Playlists. Here's a palette. Let me find a palette cleanser. Or let's just check in quickly with Portland. This is Portland Andy live streaming.
But I can't at myself. When I can moonwalk there from here. It goes to the 222, which is so bizarre. I don't know why it does that.
I can moonwalk to the ice facility.
I realized that
Yeah, I used to live very close to the ice facility too. So this is Portland, and they're, nightly protesting the ice facility there. Looks pretty dead right now. The weather is kind of awful. So that's not helping. What helped the BLM riots a lot was that it happened in the summer and the weather was mostly great. Yeah, it doesn't look like much is going on there. All right. Just trying to find a palette cleanser. Just any sort of something less harsh than what I just treated you to with my rants. Yeah.
it will end when they get their permit revoked. But for now,
Of course I'm watching the game, bro.
change happens, as far as I'm concerned. Scorch is
And here's Mexico. This is Mexico. So they're protesting Claudia Sheinbaum, the annoying Jewess that Mexico elected president. To be fair to Claudia, she is anti-Zionist, you know. Somehow, yeah, they've got, maybe 100,000 Jews in all of Mexico, if that. And somehow they elected U.S. president. They don't seem too happy with her. But again, at least she hasn't, brought Mexico into the, U.S. Israel axis. This is BG on the scene, who's done lots of great live stream work like this over the years. Was around for the riots of 2020. So that's the presidential palace they're besieging. I guess this is their January 6th. I wonder, how do you say stochastic terrorism in Mexican in Spanish? Huh? Because it looks like an insurrection. Oh, over already. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, if you wanna. Let's see. Let's look at our history. Maybe I can find something in history. I was just looking for something. Where is it? You know you're here. Where are you? Okay, here it is. Gawkhead, my new favorite channel. This guy takes video of his cats and his dog with an old handy cam. And it's just like straight up nostalgia. All right. Thank you. And thank you all, fellas. Until next time, stay frosty, stay caustic, stay mad, and be good. God bless you.